All right, welcome everyone. We're going to get started here in just a minute. Just waiting for some more folks to join, and we'll get started here shortly. We do also ask, there will be plenty of opportunity to participate during the meeting, but unless you're speaking, we do ask you to keep your video off and stay muted. Maybe we'll just give it until 7:03 and get started since we have a lot to get through.
Just noting the webinar is being recorded.
Great. Looks like we have a few more folks joining. Welcome. We're going to get started here in just a moment. If you aren't speaking, we do ask that you stay muted with your video off, but there will be plenty of opportunity to participate tonight. And if you're just joining, we're going to get started here in just a moment. It looks like we still have some folks joining, so we're going to give it just another couple minutes. And we are asking, there is going to be plenty of opportunity to participate this evening. If you're not speaking, we are asking that you stay muted with your video off. Great to see some familiar names, and great to see some AI note takers. Okay. I think we're going to go ahead and get started, and folks can trickle in here and join us as they're able. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight on this beautiful summer evening and choosing to spend a little time online. We're excited to welcome you to the second webinar for our public engagement process for Move Forward Together Vermont. And this is our open house webinar. So we're going to be having a lot of discussion together tonight. We're going to be sharing a lot of information with you. If you're just joining, welcome. And as we go through the meeting tonight, we are asking that unless you're speaking, you stay muted with your video off. We also just, for a couple of rules, just to be aware, we ask that you be respectful as you're participating in the meeting tonight and you're choosing to chime in and comment. Please just be aware of the time that you're taking up in this space, as well as be respectful of the other webinar participants who are joining us. Just wanted to note, as we're getting started, this webinar is also being recorded. We know that there are some folks who would have loved to participate tonight but can't be here. And so we are recording this webinar and we'll be posting it on our project website. So you also, if you're tuning in tonight, can go back to listen to anything that you might want to review again. Just a quick overview of the webinar. We're going to have 90 minutes together tonight. We're going to provide you with a lot of information about the Move Forward Together Vermont process and ask for your input on the draft vision and priority actions. You'll have the opportunity to participate in a series of polls that will provide us with information on how well aligned the draft vision and priority actions are with your own beliefs and your vision for the future of outdoor recreation in our state. And we'll also be opening the floor up for you to share your reactions and comment with us. So just before we dig into the details, just a quick round of introductions. My name is Jackie Dagger. I am the program manager for the Vermont Outdoor Recreation Economic Collaborative. And we've been leading this process together with the Department of Forest Parks and Recreation. And I want to turn it over to Claire Polfus to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Jackie. My name is Claire Polfus. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Recreation Program Manager for the Department of Forest Parks and Recreation. I work on statewide recreation planning, partnerships, and policy, and I have been working closely with Jackie to lead all of us together through this process of Move Forward Together Vermont.
Thanks, Claire. And I'll turn it over to our consultant partners from CRO Planning and Design, Drew and Brett. Drew, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, Drew Pollock Bruce with CRO Planning and Design. We're based here in Burlington and do a lot of planning, statewide planning with states like this. Super exciting to be working with everybody here in Vermont, and really glad to have everybody here tonight.
Thanks, Drew. Go ahead, Brett.
Yep, and then my name is Brett Rano. I'm also a planner with CRO Planning and Design, so really excited to have been throughout this process and really love hearing feedback from the public. So looking forward to this meeting.
All right, thanks everyone. And I use she, her pronouns. I forgot to mention that before. I'll turn it over to Claire to provide a little bit about our project background, goals, timeline, and engagement process throughout this month of July.
Thanks, Jackie. So some of you maybe have been involved with other parts of Move Forward Together Vermont, and for some of you, maybe this is your first time engaging with the process. So we wanted to give you a little bit of an overview. So what is Move Forward Together Vermont? This is a statewide planning process that, as we mentioned in our introductions, has been led by the Department of Forest Parks and Recreation, which is a department of the Agency of Natural Resources, and the Vermont Outdoor Recreation Economic Collaborative, also known as VOREC. And our goal is to create a shared vision and a set of priorities and action steps. So like for all of Vermont together to make an outdoor recreation future that we all want to see. We're working with a lot of partners. We've engaged a lot of like the public, as well as really important community partners, regional partners, and people in the recreation landscape to create this plan that we are developing to take our next steps for outdoor recreation in Vermont. Next slide. The basis for this plan is two things. One is called the SCORP, which is the Statewide Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan, and that is required for states to receive federal funding for the Land and Water Conservation Fund from the federal government. And so in order to get what we get is millions of dollars for recreation and conservation projects through this fund, we need to tell the federal government what we're going to do with it and how we're going to prioritize that. There's some rules for the SCORP. There's some basic rules of assessing what's available, assessing what the public needs, and having the plan for how to close the gap between what the public wants and needs and what is available. But we've done more. We've added more components to it. And as a note, we also use this as our statewide trails plan, and that's how we get recreational trails program funding from the Federal Highway Administration. So it kind of serves dual purposes. On the other side, and combined, is the VOREC Action Plan. So that was created, VOREC, or again, the Vermont Outdoor Recreation Economic Collaborative, was formed through an executive order. And as part of that executive order, there was a requirement to have an action plan. So these action steps in the plan should show how to strengthen and bolster the outdoor recreation economy in Vermont. So that was last done in 2018, 2019-ish, as was the SCORP. And so because these two processes align together and because there's so much overlap between them, we decided to join forces together and create a bigger process called Move Forward Together Vermont. Next slide. So what, oop, could you go back one, Brett? Forward one. Okay. Maybe I just missed that. Sorry about that, everyone. So what are our objectives for this? As I said, we want to create this vision and priority actions, but how? And so up here, we've put like what we're going to do is gathering a very wide network of people to collaboratively develop this vision. We're creating something that reflects what Vermonters want and need, as well as the needs of the providers of recreation and the components of the outdoor recreation economy. We want this to be based on really good data and backed up by that data. And we want to ensure that underrepresented groups that have been underrepresented in the past can feel that this plan is also for them and have been represented in this process. Next slide. So the timeline for this, it's been ongoing. We've been working on this for over a year. We started gathering data and information last September, so almost a year ago, and that continued through April. We did multiple surveys, and we also did focus groups, and then we collected all that data and analyzed it. And in May and June of this year, we created a draft vision and priorities. That's what we are presenting throughout the month of July to the public. So that's where we are now. It was just public feedback and input. Finally, once we get all that public input and incorporate it into our draft, we will create a report that we'll send to the federal government to say, here it is, here's our SCORP, here's how we're going to prioritize this funding. But then we're also going to take that and we're going to say, and Vermont, like, here's how we're going to work together to implement the parts of this plan that aren't necessarily connected to federal funding. And that's a big part of this plan. There's so much more than just telling us how we're going to spend some federal money. There's connections to communities. There's connections across state government. There's connections between state and federal government that we have to talk about and we want to get your feedback on. So that will be happening this fall. And then after that, it's all about implementing what we say that we're going to do. And that's the most exciting part. Go ahead, Jackie. I was just going to send it right back over to you.
Awesome. All right, so let's talk about our public feedback and input process. We have been throughout the month of July, and Drew, if you move forward a slide, throughout the month of July, we have been collecting public input and feedback. So we launched public input and public feedback on July 2nd with a public engagement webinar, which I mentioned earlier. That webinar was also recorded and posted on our project website at the Department of Forest Parks and Recreation. And Claire, Drew, or Brett, if one of you could go ahead and drop that link in the chat so folks have it. That launch webinar went into a lot of detail on our information gathering and data collection process. It really laid out all of the groups that we met with, that we learned, collected input from. It went into our recreation user survey that we put out and the what we learned from the survey and how we whittled down all of the information and feedback we heard into the draft vision and priority actions that we're going to be looking at in detail tonight. So if you have questions on that data collection and information gathering phase of our process, I really encourage you, if you didn't participate in that public engagement launch webinar, to go back and look at that. You can also go to our Move Forward Together Vermont story map, which is linked from our project website. And I believe Drew also just dropped that in the chat. You can also go there and look at our outreach tab. It's a tab on the story map, and that also lays out in detail the public engagement process that we went through to get to the draft vision and priority actions that we're going to be talking about tonight. And we've been soliciting public input on throughout this month of July. So in addition to that public engagement launch webinar, we also released a bunch of information on that story map website. That includes an online feedback form where we've been collecting input from folks who haven't been able to make it to one of our open houses or participate in a webinar. Last week, the week of July 15th, we actually held 2 in-person open houses. One was in Manchester at the Manchester Community Library in Southern Vermont. And then the other open house was at Johnson Elementary School, so up in Northern Vermont. And then we're here with you tonight. We're offering this virtual option for folks who couldn't make it in person or might not otherwise want to just solicit or submit their input through the online feedback form. Next slide. All right, so with that, we're going to get into it. We're going to spend the rest of our meeting looking at the draft vision and priority actions. And again, if we go to the next slide, so back a slide, I believe. Great, thank you. So just again, wanted to remind you of the robust public engagement process we went to get to this point. You can see a few of those key milestones of public engagement up on this slide, including the 2 statewide recreation user surveys, a recreation provider survey, which was led by the Vermont Recreation and Parks Association. We held 28 focus groups, which totaled 185 participants. And we also held a day-long summit with 40 outdoor recreation leaders in Vermont. So really a lot of feedback and input went into creating this draft vision and set of priority actions. Next slide. All right, so the rest of the meeting, we're going to be spending talking about this draft vision and priority actions. And before we get into the weeds on that, we wanted to give you an overview of what to expect. So just as by way of an overview, you can see on the slide here, the vision, the draft vision, is to foster healthy and vibrant communities through outdoor recreation. We have a guiding principles section, which generally, includes 3 sort of principles, and those are collaboration, inclusion, and data-driven. And again, we'll get into this in much more detail. We've identified 2 common objectives that are meant to guide all of the priorities that we work on together over the next 5 years. And those are equity and climate resilience. And then we've organized our priority actions into 3 core themes. And those are stewardship, wellness, and economic development. So we're going to start tonight by talking about the draft vision, guiding principles, and common objectives sections. And to kick us off, so the way this is going to work, I'm going to chat with you about these sections of the document, present a couple of details that we feel are really important. We're then going to open it up for some more engagement from you. So just be aware that there is more participation coming. We're just going to roll through and give you some information that we think is really important before we hear from you. All right, so the draft vision, foster healthy and vibrant communities through outdoor recreation. On the screen, you can see a paragraph from the draft vision and priority actions document that we've created. It's also up on our story map website. But really, this vision is about how, and the description is about how we as partners are working on projects through programs that would foster healthy and vibrant communities through outdoor recreation. And it includes working at the local, regional, and statewide scales to protect Vermont's healthy functioning environment, um, establishing and maintaining high quality and inviting outdoor recreation spaces, and cultivating communities that are diverse in the people they engage and the opportunities they support. We also feel strongly that work should be grounded in our communities and informed by best practices, planning, and guidance that's developed at the regional, statewide, and national levels. If you look in the document and on our story map, we also pulled out a couple of definitions for who we are and what we mean by community. We felt that it was important to clarify these aspects of how we're working because we know that to accomplish and move forward on this vision over the next 5 years, it's going to take a lot of partners and people leaning in and working together. So I just wanted to touch on those quickly, and you can see some detailed descriptions up on the slide. But what we mean by we, and that's the we is intended to encompass municipal, state, and federal government staff and programs, outdoor businesses, educational institutions, and outdoor recreation nonprofits, as well as anyone else who shares the vision of fostering healthy and vibrant communities through outdoor recreation. So the definition of we is intended to be, the people who are really working together to move forward on this vision over the next 5 years. What community means? So community, we're not defining by population size, and communities are the social foundation of both the least populated and most urban parts of Vermont. Communities also are formed through shared values, experiences, and identities. So really, we're not limiting community by municipality, although that's certainly one way to define a community. We're thinking of it more broadly. And in fact, we saw through the recreation user survey that many Vermonters define their community beyond the borders of their municipality as within 30 minutes from where they live. So really outdoor recreation and communities crosses geographic boundaries. And we wanted to lay that out as part of this plan. So moving on to how we work. So this is going back to what you saw in this overview slide that I talked about just a couple minutes ago. And the how we work is, again, going back to knowing that there's going to be a lot of partners and people who we need to lean in and work together to move forward on this vision over the next 5 years. And we wanted to provide some structure to how, or guidance on how those partnerships might work. And so we've created these 3 guiding principles to help guide those relationships and create some foundation for how they work together. So those 3 principles are collaboration, inclusion, and data-driven. So what we're saying is when people are partnering to achieve these priority actions, we're encouraging them to collaborate with each other, to really be open and listen and learn from each other, as well as be thoughtful in their planning. We also want to make sure that as people are leaning in and partnering with each other, that those relationships are inclusive. We wanted to encourage partners to create spaces and places for all people in the outdoors, no matter their background or ability. And with data-driven, we wanted to encourage folks to look at the data as we're moving forward on these priority actions. We want to make sure that partners assess information related to each priority as they advance them, and to make sure that we can remain flexible and adapt to changing needs as we learn from that data that we're gathering. Finally, the two common objectives that we've set, and we go into why we pulled these out as common objectives in a lot more detail in the public engagement launch webinar, as well as on the story map. But really, we felt that these two common objectives were really important to drive all of the priority actions that we intend to work on together as Vermonters over the next 5 years. And so those two common objectives are equity and climate resilience. And equity, with the equity as an objective, it's really to collectively expand opportunities and reduce barriers so that all people feel welcome in Vermont's outdoors. With climate resilience, the objective is to collectively strengthen the sustainability, flexibility, and resilience of our communities so that we can weather the impacts of climate change, which I know for many of us rings very true right now, especially in the wake of flooding that hit parts of the state last week. So climate resilience is really high in the minds of a lot of Vermonters right now, and we expect that it will continue to be over the next 5 years. All right, so with that, we are going to open the floor up to you. We are going to be getting into much more detail with the priority actions in just a moment, but we wanted to pause there and hear from you. Are there any questions about the draft vision, the guiding principles, or the common objectives? And then we'll go to a poll, but just want to make sure if there's any questions coming up for you on anything that we just talked about, that we answer those questions first before we get into any kind of direct feedback. And we have Brett who will look for raised hands and any questions popping up in the chat. All right. Well, seeing none, we can always
like
come
maybe
back.
Jill.
Sorry, Drew.
Looks like maybe Jill, is there a question? We were just asking folks if they didn't have a question or wanted to speak to keep your camera off and then just come off camera when you do have a question. You can also raise a hand and just let us know if you do have a question.
I'm not seeing any at this time. We can always come back if questions come up as we go along. So please feel free if you do have a question as we move forward to raise your hand. And am I seeing a comment? No. Okay. So we're going to move forward, and I'm going to turn it over to Brett to explain how this next part of our meeting is going to work.
Yeah, so we're going to be doing a live poll through Menti, or a Mentimeter poll. And this will help us just kind of gauge and visualize just your guys' opinions and thoughts in alignment with what we just talked about. And so what you can do is either scan that QR code on your phone, or you can go to menti.com on your computer or your phone and enter the code that's shown above, that 3411-5960, and you will get access to our Menti poll, which will help us just gauge just your alignment and thoughts about what we just talked about. And so let me pull that up. And so you'll get into this, and I'll prompt you, and you can leave this open throughout the entire meeting because I will be guiding through the slides. But overall, we're just asking you, to rate. Firstly, to rate the vision to foster healthy and vibrant communities through outdoor recreation, and select on your phone on that sliding scale bar whether it is not very aligned with your vision for outdoor recreation in Vermont, or if it's very aligned. And so I see 3 people in it right now. Got some votes coming in already, and we're just going to pause. We'll go through and we'll wait and we'll digest some of these comments, and then we'll go from there. And Patty, I see you have a question.
So I'm sorry, I don't see the QR code up on my screen.
Oh, let me go right back to it.
Sorry.
I'll leave that open for another minute. I'll go into the results after that in case people need time.
Maybe we could also drop the website and the code in the chat.
It's a great idea. See. Okay, I'll check out the results we have going on. So far, we got 7 people in, and it looks like we are averaging at 5 out of the alignment, so that's good to see. 8 people in, still running pretty good. I'll give it another couple minutes. You can feel free to respond, and we'll move on to the next one. Give it another 20 or 30 seconds. See, another person hopped in. Great. Well, it looks like there's some consistent alignment here, looking at the data we're seeing. Overall, that this vision is well aligned with you guys' thoughts and visions of outdoor recreation. And we're going to move on to the next one now. So if you leave this up, you don't have to exit out or anything. You're automatically going to get prompted to respond to the next question. And so we were asking you, is the definition of who we are clear? And you can either rate from not at all clear or to perfectly clear. And thanks, Drew, for dropping the QR code in the chat as well. Okay, seeing results come in about 4.5 out of 5 right now.
It's fun to watch it jump around.
Yeah, it's a fun live data you see pulling up. It's super fun. And I see we have 9 respondents tallying out at about 4.4 out of 5, still riding into that clear side of things. And I'm going to give it another 20 seconds, but I believe it was 9 people in the last one, so I think we're riding high with 9 people, but give it a couple more seconds just to make sure. Okay. And so now I want to know is the definition of what we define as community. So what community means, is that clear to y'all? Again, you can rate it on a not at all clear to perfectly clear, makes sense. Got 4 people in right now. Okay, 7 people in, looking pretty clear for folks. Okay, so we have 8 responses right now. Give it a couple seconds in case anyone else hops in. Okay, got those team of 9. All right, so it looks like the definition of community is pretty clear for folks. I'm going to move on to the next one now. And so now I want to ask rating your guide or rating the guiding principles on how well they align with, how would you like outdoor recreation stakeholders to work together in the next 5 years? So defining on collaboration, inclusion, and data-driven. Is that very aligned with your thoughts or very unaligned or somewhere in the middle? So we've got 4 folks in, 5 folks in now. 6, 7, 8. Give it about 15 more seconds. It's looking like there's some agreement among all the categories, which is great to see. And we got that 9th person in. Perfect. So we're seeing that it's followed by very tightly, but inclusion and collaboration and data-driven in terms of alignment, which is wonderful. All right, I'm going to move on to the next one. So please rate the common objectives, equity and climate resilience, for how well they align with your objectives for outdoor recreation in the next 5 years. Whether that's very unaligned or very aligned, same as the past ones. So we've got 3 in, 5 in, 6. 8. Okay. Give it about 15 more seconds if that 9th person comes in. So far seems very well aligned in both realms there. All right, I'm going to move on to the next one for this section. So how well do you understand why we called out equity and climate resilience as common objectives? Does that make sense to you? Does it make perfect sense? Are you wondering why didn't you pick something else or somewhere in the middle? Okay, we got 6 folks in right now. Got 8. I'll give it another 15 seconds. Overall, it does look like that. Calling out equity and climate resilience as common objectives makes sense to folks. Okay, we've got 9 in. So we're sitting at about 4.8. And that's all we've got for this section. We'll come back to this poll. And so we'll present some more. We got some more feedback to gauge from y'all. Feel free to just leave this poll open. When we come back to it later down the road, I will just open this screen back up and move on to the next question. So you don't have to close out anything or rescan the QR code. And then, yeah, so I'll turn it back over to Jackie.
Great. Wow, it's really satisfying to watch that Mentimeter poll, people's responses come in. That was really fun. So now we are going to get into priority actions in much more detail here in just a moment, but we do know that polls can't capture all comments. And before we move on to priority actions, we wanted to turn the floor over to you to share any additional comments, questions, feedback that you might have on the draft vision, guiding principles, and common objectives. So now I'm going to pause and we're going to look for raised hands. We're going to look for comments or questions in the chat. And we'll give it about 5 minutes and then move on to the priority actions. We will have more discussion time at the end of the meeting. So if we aren't able to get to everyone, we can always hold until the end of the meeting for any remaining comments or questions. Great. And I do see a video on screen, and I'm sorry, I can't quite see your name, but please go ahead and unmute and share your thought.
Um,
Patty.
yeah, it's Patty again. Um, yeah, but I'm just curious. I'm up here in Essex, Vermont, right here in Essex town. Do you come to uh, come to economic development commissions and speak? You guys are great.
Thank you. We have been, we actually did a focus group with regional representatives from our regional planning commissions during our public engagement, our first, our information gathering and data collection phase of the project. But it's certainly something we're going to be doing once we finalize the vision and priority actions. We think that economic development corporations and regional planning commissions are really important stakeholders in the work that we're going to be doing over the next 5 years.
Great. I'll wait to ask my other questions so other people can talk because I don't want to take up your time.
Thanks, Patty. Anyone else? I do see a chat message. Thank you, Jill. Jill says she thinks we've done a great job. And she's looking forward to hearing about some of the specific actions, which is great. We'll get into those in just a moment. Just give it another minute, see if there is any other burning thoughts at this point or comments that anyone would like to share. All right. Well, like I said, we're going to have some more discussion time held at the end of the meeting. So if you have any other thoughts that you're still working to form, or you're just waiting to learn more about the priority actions, we'll have some more time for discussion. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Claire.
Thanks, Jackie. And thank you all for your participation in the Mentimeters. I agree that it's fun to watch the information come in. Brett, yes, thank you. So what, with the priority actions, our priority actions were developed based on the surveys and the focus groups that we implemented this winter. And we felt that it was important to organize them. And so we created 3 core themes: stewardship, wellness, and economic development. And the reason for these themes is that the actions that came out of the process really kind of bucketed into these themes. But it was also really important to us that we're not talking that stewardship is only for trails organizations and municipal parks departments, and wellness is only for public health individuals, and economic development is only for businesses. We want people, like the whole outdoor recreation stakeholders, whoever you are, to be able to see themselves in all of these themes. They're interrelated. Each one relies on the other to move forward on our vision for healthy and vibrant communities fostered through outdoor recreation. And so, although we have them bucketed, because we felt that a list of 19 priority actions would be difficult to understand, we do really want to emphasize that if you are a business owner interested in a stewardship project, please work on it. Work together with the trails organizations in your town, or the statewide councils that work on trails or parks. We want this to be very interrelated. Also, just as a reminder, those common objectives of equity and climate resilience, the reason we called them out as larger objectives is that they relate to every single one of our priority actions. And so some of the priority actions might very clearly have a direct tie to climate resilience, while others you might have to think, how does this relate to climate resilience? But we know that everything that we do needs to promote that flexibility and resilience in our communities. And it's the same with equity. Some of them are very clear, obvious ties to equity, but some of them are like, no, we need to consider equity as we make these upgrades to trail systems, or as we rehabilitate town parks and playgrounds. Like, we need to be thinking about equity as and moving forward that objective throughout all of our priority actions. So with those two notes, we're going to dive into stewardship. And what does the stewardship theme mean? It means like we acknowledge and we support that our environment and all of the natural processes around us are what makes outdoor recreation in Vermont special. And we need to care for both the environment and the physical infrastructure that makes outdoor recreation possible. And the way that we're doing that is through both direct action and through planning and support. So that's what these priority actions are focused on. If we go to the next slide, we'll get a little bit more into detail into each priority action. So the first action is to invest in stewarding and upgrading existing recreational infrastructure to better accommodate modern use and the impacts from climate change. What all of our outreach showed is that people love to recreate outdoors in Vermont with even what we have right now. But we need to take care of those places and those trails and those parks that are loved by all of us in Vermont. So this could mean, physically upgrading a trail, like installing water bars, making a better bridge that's better protective of the environment, making sure that an accessible trail stays accessible. All of those things that we have, we need to care for. The second priority action is to strengthen guidance and education about climate resilient strategies that help communities interact with their rivers and water bodies, with particular focus on public access, conservation, and healthy ecosystems. And this goes right to Jackie's point that we are all reeling again from another huge flooding event in Vermont. And we need to figure out and better plan around our rivers in particular, but also our other water bodies. So projects within this priority action might be developing guidelines for when towns are thinking about their floodplains and maybe even changing from development to a park. Like, what are the guidelines for that? How is a public park along the river, like, how is it best designed and best created? Figuring out guidelines for how to be flexible in our recreation management to accommodate things like when rivers change how they flow. The third priority action is to cultivate and promote a stewardship ethic among Vermonters and visitors that promotes respectful behavior, shared use, and service to land and community. And this really focused on the people who are recreating, taking on part of this stewardship of caring for the places that we all love, whether it's volunteering and giving back to your community park by, cleaning up trash, or opening up trails in the spring, or grooming trails in the winter, but also with our visitors and making sure that people who visit here are also doing the same and caring for the places. And finally, it's about knowing that people like to get outside in different ways and respecting the different ways in the shared spaces outdoors, just like we do in shared spaces in the built parts of our communities, whether it's, making sure to be respectful during hunting seasons if you're not a hunter, and vice versa. Making sure that you're respecting other people's uses when you go to a parking lot that has both motorized and non-motorized trails at it. Making sure that we understand that going outside is a privilege in Vermont and that we're sharing this with a lot of people. Next slide. The third stewardship priority action gets a little bit more into like how to better support the people who are implementing the stewardship of our resources. So the first is the fourth or the first of these types of actions is to identify and support regional outdoor recreation planning and partnerships to build capacity, promote high quality planning, and strengthen partnerships between existing regional organizations and local organizations, businesses, and groups. And the reason for this is that there's a lot of learning at the regional level that can help towns and local organizations to better support the recreation in their communities. And as we said, a lot of people view the recreation community as beyond geographic boundaries. And a lot of our natural resources also are regional, whether it's the Connecticut River or the Lake Champlain or the ridge of the Green Mountains and everything in between. Like a river goes through many municipalities, for example, and so regional plans can better suit those types of resources. The next one about supporting the people who are stewarding our resources is to create and promote a suite of technical assistance resources that will increase the skills and expertise of nonprofits, municipalities, and businesses who can serve and manage recreation and open spaces, recreational infrastructure, and recreation-related programming. So that's about that. You know, there might be a volunteer committee in a town who wants to rehabilitate their town forest nature trail, but they might not have the skills to know what to do to rehabilitate that trail. And so we're talking about creating a suite of resources that could help them, whether that's universal best management practices, whether that's about how to apply for grants, or whether that's about information sharing between different organizations. And finally, the last priority action under stewardship is to reinforce and sustain recreation on private lands through policy improvement, education, and support for private landowners. A lot of recreation in Vermont happens on private lands, and we are hearing more and more that we need to better support the people who are allowing that to happen, whether that's through better actions and behavior of the people recreating, whether that's policies that support those private landowners, or whether it's about just even like signage so people understand better what types of lands that they're on. So that was a lot of talking at you about all of the priority actions. Before we go to the Menti, real quick, does anyone have any specific questions about these actions that we can answer before we go into the rating? You can raise your hand or put them in the chat. Yeah, Patty. Oop, I think you're still muted.
Oh, sorry. What if
Oh,
you're
that's
in
okay.
my question is, I love everything you're saying, but what if the leadership of a particular town with a beautiful area of land has a big 40% area slated to be manufacturing freight industry, and yet the entire population of the town wants what you're saying. How do you collaborate with something so in such opposition? How can everything you're saying, we can't convince that side of the economic system to stop ruining the trails to make manufacturing freight industry an area within it's Saxon Hill Trails. I don't know if you've ever heard of Saxon Hill. It's a very well-known biking area. It's getting ruined. It's getting absolutely ruined. And that's all I want to say. I love everything you're talking about, but I don't know how you change other than you coming and speaking to our town. because the townspeople want what you're saying, but the developers are winning, basically. That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge. And actually, we have a priority action kind of about that, about getting better tools for engaging and educating municipal leaders and select boards about the value of outdoor recreation. It just wasn't, again, it's how these themes are all interrelated, and that will come together in the economic development section. But that sounds challenging, and it is. Of course, there's only so much space, and making spaces that comes from the community is really important. And one of the huge values of outdoor recreation, of how we get outside, are these shared community spaces. So yeah, thank you for your comment.
Yeah, and Claire, I just wanted to add,
You're
like,
welcome.
to Patty's comment that, you know, we realize that, like, there are inherent conflicts of interests in some of these places where we're setting priority actions. And really, like, we don't expect for there not to be, but we setting a vision and some priority actions for us to work on, or for partners to work on together. We are asking people to we're encouraging people to lean in, to think about where these conflicts exist, and work together to build consensus, to work on these issues together. And we expect that those are things that we're going to need to do over the next 5 years to make some headway on these. That's why this is a vision, and you know, we intend for it to be something that we as Vermonters are reaching towards.
Yeah, thanks, Jackie. Kathy, looks like you might have a question.
Yes, my apologies. I just wanted to make a comment. I work at Northwest Regional Planning Commission, and I would say that this is, potentially a role that your regional planning commission can take, as far as having the conversation with the municipality. They often have these difficult conversations around various things related to the land versus economic development. And I would encourage communities to engage them in a difficult conversation.
Good point. And definitely goes to that value of having that regional voice in these conversations. Any other questions about these 6 priority actions that I went through? Again, if you come up with something later, we're going to be breaking number of times, and then again at the end, if you come back to that. So that is, we can always come back to specific questions. But let's move on to the Mentimeter again. So again, as Brett said, just pull it back up on your phone. But if you forgot and you closed it, feel free to scan the QR code again, or go to menti.com on your computer. And then we'll move on to the next 2 questions.
Perfect. Yep. So again, here is the QR code and the menti.com link and code. That's both of those are in the chat. I'll give it a second just for people to reorient themselves, and I'll move on to the next set of questions we have, which were right about stewardship. So if you go to here, I will move it to the next question. So rating the stewardship priority actions for how well they align with what you think the priorities for outdoor rec should be in the next 5 years in Vermont. So how are these priorities that we listed, how are they priorities to you? So, the investing, stewarding, upgrading existing infrastructure, strengthening guidance and education about climate resilience strategies, or cultivating and promoting a stewardship ethic among Vermonters. We want to understand how well that aligns with you as a priority for outdoor recreation in Vermont for the next 5 years. And if you have any issues accessing the Menti poll, I'm not seeing anyone. Oh, I see 2 people. People are figuring it out. Perfect. Feel free to just raise your hand or put something in the chat, and I can address it as well. So we'll sit here. We have 5 people. Looks like folks are getting with it. A lot of agreements here, which is good to see. like we've got 6 responses. Seven. Give it about 20 more seconds. See 8 people in. Thank you, Drew, for dropping the QR code in. It's the same QR code, but it'll just put you right in here where we are. Like we've got 8 folks. I'll give it another 10 seconds or so. All right, well, it looks like there is agreement that all of these are absolutely a priority, which is great to see. We'll move on to the next one now, which were the next set of stewardship priority actions. So please rate the stewardship priority actions for how well they align with priorities for outdoor rec for the next 5 years for your perspective. And then these are that other set. So identifying and supporting regional planning and partnerships to build capacity, reinforcing and sustaining recreation on private lands through policy improvement, and more, and creating and promoting a suite of technical assistance resources to help increase skills and expertise of all those involved in outdoor recreation and stewarding Vermont's lands. Okay, got 3 in right now. Four folks in here. Five, 7, 8. Great. And it looks like there's a little bit of variance among these ones. Looks like creating and promoting the technical assistance resources is up at 4.6. Reinforcing and sustaining recreation on private lands through assistance resources and is at 4. And then identifying and supporting regional planning and partnerships to build capacity, promote high quality planning, and strengthen partnerships between regional and local folks is at 4.5. So still some agreement, but a little bit more variance we're seeing than the other ones. And I believe those are it before the next one. So I can turn it back over to Claire. Thanks so much for responding. We'll come back to this for the next set of priority actions and you'll see me again.
Thanks, Brett. So just one more, one more chance. Again, if you have comments on them, on the, like, rather than questions, we had just asked for questions. I know we kind of got into some comments as well, which is totally fine. Does anyone have any comments that you'd like to give us about these 6 priority actions? Again, if you don't, we'll have more chances. And we also have the public feedback form online, which is linked at our website and at our story map. And so if you think of something later and you want to type it out, that will be open through the end of July, through July 31st. But you can also share that feedback now. Okay, let's move on to the wellness Oh, Jill, sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you. I think all of these different areas of stewardship are very worthwhile, but I do feel that the stewardship ethic among Vermonters and visitors is the absolute linchpin, because if people aren't respecting others and respecting the land that they're on, then I think all of the other pieces fall apart. So I worry sometimes that, you know, folks just blatantly choose to ignore rules and requests for appropriate behavior. And I think that that is the piece where if we don't have that piece, then the rest doesn't, you know, it's less of an effective effort.
Thanks for that comment. That makes a lot of sense to me.
You're welcome.
Anything else on the stewardship priority actions? Porter.
I guess I'm wondering, and maybe I missed it or maybe it's coming later, but I know that, and this is a really comprehensive and well-organized planning, but I'm just wondering, with the monies available, what's being directed to new projects, or is that just in a different section and the emphasis here is on the stewardship and upgrading existing structures? And then for the priority related to the suite of technical assistance, I mean, that sounds really valuable, but I'm just wondering, you know, what the balance is between resources actually given to project and program development versus sort of developing some back end access. And it's hard to choose when you look at it sort of on the Menti, it all seems really, really valuable and important. So how do you determine a relative priority? But it feels to me like some things are fundamentally missing here, and maybe it's just that we haven't worked through some of the others.
Great. So for your first question, there is in the next suite of priority actions, there is a priority action about how to prioritize or strategize new projects. And so we'll get into that in just a moment. In terms of prioritizing funding, like the funding, some of the funding can only be used for certain things. So some of it couldn't be used for technical assistance because it's restricted. And so in that way, like those priority actions won't be relevant for that funding. So like we're limited in that way. And so for the priority actions that don't have like clear funding behind them, that's where we get into those partnerships and relationships and getting the network of stakeholders engaged in figuring out the solution. So each of these priority actions, for example, investing in stewarding and upgrading existing recreational infrastructure is a high priority of the recreational trails program and is a very easy shoe-in for that program. We do this already, and we will continue to do that priority partly with that funding. We may need more funding. Like that's what we're hearing is we're falling behind on our maintenance of what we have. And so we need to figure out how to bolster that, but that's where that funding source goes. It can't really go towards some of the other things because of the rules that go along with it. But like VOREC, for example, will be taking this plan and like our role for this fall and winter is to figure out like the networks that will be engaged in each of these priority actions. And then in terms of prioritizing what we haven't prioritized, we're not saying this is more important than another right now. And I think there's advantages to doing that and disadvantages. And I think if you have a strong feeling about that, like we'd love to hear from you either, tonight or in our feedback form to say like you definitely need to prioritize this, or you think that they're like presenting them as equal priorities makes sense. I'd love to hear from all of you about how you think about that.
Claire, and just I want to reinforce the message of, there is much more work, obviously, as you guys are all seeing and, bringing up. There is more work to do to figure out how we actually move forward on these individual priorities. At this time, and I am just doing a time check because I know we are intended to wrap up at 8:30 and we have 2 more core themes to get through. But just a note on process, if those process questions are coming up for you, is totally understandable. It is something that we will be working to figure out as we move forward from this process. Right now, we're really focused on, are these the right priority actions? Do these represent how we in Vermont want to work or what we want to work on in the next 5 years? So just encouraging comments to really focus on that with these priority actions. Try not to, if you can, try not to jump too far ahead, because right now what's important is for us to really solidify what these priority actions where we're intending to focus.
I do see Patty has her hand up.
Yeah,
Jackie.
Patty, go
Oh,
ahead, and then we'll
I
move
just
to
want to say
wellness.
one quick thing, after you just spoke, that Essex, well, we have what's called Fellowship of the Wheel. It's a very active group of mountain bikers, and there's like 2,000 members. But we actually did just recently get a grant for 85,000. And the reason I'm saying this is what the last woman just spoke about, that okay, there might only that they're saying this, we only have this amount of money, but even though the industry and everything's going up, we're going to make some trails. We're going to try to work together and make these trails, which is great. The Fellowship of the Wheel, I don't know where they got the grant, but it was just approved by our select board. And but my point is, it's saying, okay, we only have this amount. If you're going to need more, we're going to have to, I don't know what, apply for another grant, or at least it's a start. So it's nice that your not industry, but your goals and your whole outfit that you're promoting here is available to, maybe Essex should reach out to you, because you guys have a lot of wise suggestions. So thanks.
Well, thank you. And I believe that Drew actually posted about that project. It was actually funded through the Vermont Outdoor Recreation Economic Collaborative Community Grant Program, because this year with our funding, we did fund some planning grants, because there's limited availability of those funds, as well as implementation projects. Okay, let's move on to wellness, because as Jackie said, we have only limited amount of time. Let's move through this maybe slightly quicker. So the wellness priorities actions, we know that outdoor recreation, getting outside, is like inherently important to many people, both for our mental and physical health. In all of our surveys, the highest reason people go outside to recreate is for their mental health. And we know that's a really important, but we also know that not everyone has that available to them, even in Vermont, which is a relatively rural state. People don't have access to the outdoors. And so these are about the people getting outside and making it more possible, more inclusive, and helping people feel more welcome outdoors. So next slide. There's 7 of the wellness priorities. The first is to create and enhance in-community outdoor recreation opportunities that directly connect to where people live, learn, and work. And this is about knowing where people are and making it easy for people to get outside, whether that's making a connection to from a school to a town forest, so kids can get outside easily, both while in school and outside of school. It's about making bike lanes in municipalities so people can commute by bike, and making sure that everyone in Vermont can access the outdoors. The second is the priority about new infrastructure, new outdoor spaces, new open spaces. And it's about developing those spaces to strategically fill gaps in experiences and distribution across the state. And these should be identified by public outreach, assessment, and planning. And the reason that we want to be really strategic about new opportunities is that we know that there is limited funding available, but we also know that the current opportunities weren't created in an equitable system. And we know some people, depending where they live, have better access than other people. So this is about conserving new open spaces where there aren't open spaces. It's about putting in new accessible trails where there aren't other accessible trails. Making sure that there's access to water for people in communities where there is water, especially in places where there might not be public access on the water body. The third is to create safe, welcoming, and environmentally sustainable entry spaces into the outdoors by improving signage, parking, mapping, bathroom facilities, and accessibility at trailheads, parks, and water access. This is a really complicated way of saying that what we heard from a lot of our outreach is that entry space, like the parking lot and the trailhead, or the park in a municipality, is like the priority is to improve those spaces so people can feel welcome right away, whether that's making them cleaner, adding bathrooms, making really clear signage so people don't feel like they're going to get lost or don't know if they're welcome in that space. So we heard that from both our focus groups and from our surveys. Next slide. So the fourth is to centralize, improve, and make more accessible information resources about outdoor recreation opportunities and events. We heard from a lot of people that they don't know where to go, or it's really hard to find, for example, where to go swimming, because some beaches are owned by towns and some beaches are private and some beaches are owned by state parks. And it's really hard to understand like when they're open, when they're closed, because you have to pick everyone's, you have to know everyone's website in order to check that. We also found from people interested in adaptive recreation or accessible spaces that it's really hard to find that in one place. They have to go to every single person's website and they want to have more centralized information. Then we move on to supporting programs that reduce the cost of outdoor recreation, including gear libraries, no or low cost recreation programming and rentals, and accessible transportation. One of the largest barriers to people getting outside, according to our surveys, is the cost of outdoor recreation. And we want to lower that cost by supporting these programs. Again, like what a gear library is, for those of you who don't know, is a place where people can like rent an e-bike for free for an afternoon to try it out, to see if it's something they like, and to access it, no matter how much income you or your family brings in. Then we move on to strengthening community awareness about improved health and wellness outcomes through outdoor recreation. We know that it's really important to people to get outside. We know that it really improves a lot of the health crises that we're facing, including loneliness, mental health, substance abuse. All of those things are can be improved through outdoor recreation. And so we want to strengthen that awareness. And there's things like prescriptions to state parks. We could expand that program, get more people out there, get more people understanding that this is a health decision they're making. And finally, the last one is to strengthen connections between outdoor recreation providers, public health providers, educational programs, senior centers, and local community resources that cater to health and wellness. In other words, what we heard from people, especially in our focus groups, is that there are still silos that we need to break down, and we need to encourage people who are working in these spaces to work together across those silos of work. And so we have some ideas on the screen that came through our focus groups, but it's really about making connections within our communities of people working towards that same goal who might have different backgrounds and different professional expertise. I know I'm going a lot faster because we're low on time, but I'm gonna say, like, let's move to the Mentimeter and then open it up for questions and discussion. So,
Can I
yeah.
make an agenda adjustment suggestion? Just because of time and we're close to 8:30, my suggestion is that we move through the Mentimeter for wellness and then we cover economic development and do the Mentimeter for that. Just so if folks need to leave, they can, but let's stay on a little longer. So if you do have a question, a comment about these priority actions, please feel free to stay on for a little bit longer, and we can hold this space to answer those questions. But just want to make sure we get through the Mentimeter.
Great. Okay, so you can move on back on your phones or your computer, same QR code, same code.
Great. And I will move on to that. And we'll start with these. Feel free to rate these wellness priority actions. Same drill as last time. So how well they align with what you think priority should be for outdoor rec in the next 5 years. Generally, through creating, enhancing in-community outdoor recreation opportunities, developing recreational infrastructure, and conserving open spaces to fill gaps in experiences and distribution, and then creating a safe and welcoming and environmentally sustainable entry spaces into the outdoors by improving signage, parking, mapping, bathrooms, and accessibility opportunities. And I see there's 3 people in. We'll make sure to be conscious of time, but also want to make sure that people have the opportunity to get their feedback in as well. So seeing 4 responses. 5. Okay, looks like we're sitting at about 5 total response. 6, there you go. Give about another 20 seconds for those that may be getting into the Menti a little later. But overall, it looks like creating a safe, welcoming, environmentally sustainable entry spaces in the outdoors is a very pressing priority for folks, followed by creating and enhancing in community outdoor recreation opportunities, and then followed by developing infrastructure that fill gaps in experiences across the state. But nonetheless, looks like that's a pretty high priority among all folks. Okay, 7. I'm gonna give it about 10 more seconds, so we'll move on. And there's 8. Okay. Moving on to the next one. And here's the next one. So here are those other priorities that we had for wellness. So that's, centralizing, improving, and making more accessible informational resources about outdoor recreation opportunities and events, supporting programs that reduce the cost of outdoor rec, including gear libraries, low or no cost programming and rentals, accessible transportation, and strengthening connections between outdoor rec providers, public health providers, educational programs, senior centers, and local community resources. And then strengthen community awareness about improved health and wellness outcomes through outdoor recreation. And so far we have 1 folk sitting in there, and 2. See, the responses are starting to come in. That's great. Really appreciate your feedback through this. This is a great way to just visualize and understand where we're sitting as opposed to what y'all are thinking. Okay, got 6 folks in. Looks like a little variance here at strengthening community awareness about improved health and wellness outcomes through outdoor recreations. A little bit behind the other 3. So it looks like there's some variance there. And just for the sake of time, I am going to pass that back over to Claire and Jackie. I believe we ran through them all.
Thanks, Brett. And thank you all again for making your ratings. Again, we're just going to move on to economic development and then open space at the end. I'm going to kind of fly through these as I did with the wellness priorities. The economic development priorities, though, are really about strengthening our communities and our connection to the people and businesses that make recreation possible for all of us, like whether it's gear stores, bed and breakfast, manufacturers, the people who, like I said, really make it possible and for all of us to get outside as well. Again, these 3 priorities really all work together to support outdoor recreation in Vermont. So moving to just the specifics of our priorities, the first is to develop information and resources that can be used to demonstrate the ways in which outdoor recreation resources and vibrant local economies are connected. And so this is, again, another one of those, like, ensuring that outdoor recreation as an opportunity is known for municipalities, is known for through the local media and through community members to understand that the vibrancy of our communities is connected to outdoor recreation. The second is to strengthen the capacity of municipalities to engage in the outdoor recreation economy, including recreation management, community planning for local and regional development, and local business support. And so this is the one, Patty, that I wanted to call out for you, that, like, we understand that municipalities have really low capacity in many parts of Vermont, and we want to strengthen that capacity to support these projects that can really help communities, but sometimes those communities can't make them happen because they have to fix their roads or they have to prioritize other really important things. And so these are things like creating and supporting recreation planner positions at RPCs, making sure that state parks are like connected to the municipalities that they serve, creating like better guidance for how municipalities can access funding. The third is to strengthen workforce opportunities in Vermont's outdoor sector by supporting partnerships and programs that define clear career pathways and support a highly skilled workforce. This is a very, very important. We're hearing it a lot from the business community, from nonprofits. Getting people who understand outdoor recreation and are highly skilled is really, really important. And it's really important for our communities as well to like develop people within our communities who understand this sector. So this is anything from, supporting the networking that needs to happen in order to bolster those opportunities, expanding certifications and micro-credentials so people who understand outdoor recreation can show employers that they understand it. Next slide. So for our last three priority actions, is to foster resilience and flexibility in outdoor recreation communities, organizations, and businesses to withstand both major weather events and variable climate by investing in planning, knowledge sharing, education opportunities, and expanded programming. So this is about like knowing that our climate is changing, knowing that these major flood events, bad low snow winters, how can we be flexible in supporting our communities to withstand those changes? Investing in different programs, investing in understanding what we're facing and how we can build our communities up to withstand that. The next is to invest in organizations and businesses led by and serving non-white Vermonters, LGBTQ plus veterans, seniors, Vermonters who are low income, and Vermonters with adaptive needs to strengthen outdoor recreation opportunities and participation. These are populations that have been underrepresented in these planning efforts in the past. They have fewer opportunities to get outside, and they are being led by people who really understand. And so we need to invest in the people who understand these communities to help them feel more comfortable outdoors and welcomed. And finally, our last one is to support innovation in Vermont's outdoor sector by supporting entrepreneurship and new small businesses, provide resources to businesses exploring new climate-friendly technologies, and businesses seeking year-round employment solutions. So this is really thinking forward for our outdoor business sector and thinking about new and exciting opportunities and making sure that we can support them as a state, whether that's through networking or through funding assistance. Again, I know I went through that really fast and I still didn't go fast enough. So let's go to the Mentimeter and then open it up for questions.
Okay, we'll hop into this not last round, but the next round of Mentimeters, and I will get that open right now for everybody. So please rate the economic development priority actions on how well they align with what you think the priority should be for outdoor rec, particularly in the sector for the next 5 years. So that's developing information and resources that can be used to demonstrate the ways in which outdoor recreation resources and vibrant local economies are connected. Strengthening the capacity of municipalities to engage in the outdoor rec economy through including rec management, community planning, and local business support. And then strengthening workforce opportunities in Vermont's outdoor sector by supporting partnerships and programs that define clear career pathways and skill development. So looking like we got 4 people in already, 6 people, everyone's with the program. Looks like we've got 8 folks already in and responded. Looks like a generally high level of agreement that these are all priorities. And I believe I'm going to move to the next one now as we've hit 8. And for the next set of priorities, please rate them. That's fostering resilience and flexibility in outdoor rec communities, organizations, and businesses to withstand both major weather events and variable climate. Investing in organizations and businesses led by and serving non-white Vermonters, LGBTQ+, veterans, seniors, and Vermonters who are low income or have adaptive needs. and supporting climate innovation and year-round employment in Vermont's outdoor sector by supporting entrepreneurship and providing resources to existing businesses. Looks like we've got 4 folks responding, and we're sitting at 5.0, looking 4.5 to 5.0 for each one on average. Great. Looks like we got 7. I'll give it about 15 seconds to see if that 8th person comes in. There it is. Yeah, y'all are fast at it. All right, so I will turn this back over to Jackie.
Great. So we are at time, and as we said, we're going to stay on a little longer to address any additional comments or questions. But just because we know folks probably have to go and might start signing off, just wanted to cover a couple of quick next steps. So we've said throughout this meeting, we have a bunch of information up on our project website. On the Department of Forest Parks and Recreation page, there's a link to our story map with lots more detail about our public engagement process up to this point. We have an online feedback form that's open through the end of this month. So that closes on July 31st. And if you didn't get a chance, if you have to sign off and you didn't get to share your comment with us, please go there and fill out that form with your thoughts. We're really eager to hear about it, and we want to know. So those are our final opportunities to engage in feedback on the draft vision and priority actions. Once we close the online feedback form, we're going to assess all of the feedback that we've gathered through public input. We're going to look at integrating it into and finalizing the vision and priority actions. And like Claire said, there's the SCORP that we're going to be working on a report going to the National Park Service this fall. We're also on the Vermont Outdoor Recreation Economic Collaborative side, looking at how do we activate this vision and set of priority actions moving into 2025. So just a couple of highlights on next steps. And thank you to everyone for joining tonight. Like we said, we're going to open it up right now for questions, additional comments, and we'll stay on a little bit longer to capture those. But if you do need to take off, we understand. All right. So if you are staying on and you still have a comment, a question to add, we'll look for raised hands and comments dropped in the chat.
Thanks, Natalie. Like we said, I really enjoyed using the Mentimeter too. I'm glad it was easy to use on your end. I also saw your other comment about prioritization, and I totally understand that ranking or another way of prioritizing might also help. Again, like the difficulty of that is in that we're not prioritizing one funding source with this plan. We're using a lot of different strategies to implement these priority actions. And so it's a little hard to compare them like that, like with those priorities. But if you have any that you felt were very, very high, please let us know. And like we may consider adding some priorities depending on what we hear from the public throughout this month. So thanks for your comments. I appreciate that. Anything else that people want to add? Oh, go ahead.
Helpful context. And I had to come in a little bit late putting my daughter to bed tonight. But yeah, that's helpful to keep in mind the different funding streams, and didn't know exactly, the end goal, but if it was to be a ranking, that would probably be the easiest. But that's super helpful to keep in mind. And I think looking at all these actions, everything sounds awesome, and like what we most, a lot of people want and enjoy in the communities. So it's easy to fall into the trap of sliding that scale all the way to the right.
Of course. Yeah. Anyone
thank you.
else? Oh yeah, of course. Thank you for joining and for providing your comment. Anyone else have anything that you'd like to add? Again, if not, and if you think of it later, please fill out the online feedback form. That's how we're getting comments. But if you have a question or anything like that, feel free to reach out to me or Jackie or both of us. Our emails are on the screen right now and are on our website. So you can find them that way as well. If you lose all of these links, just Google Move Forward Together Vermont and it'll get you there. And again, like, thank you so much for attending today and taking some time out of your evening to join with us. And please share with other people who you think might want to engage in this process. That, as we said, we have our everything open for another 9 days before we close it and start assessing the feedback that we've gotten.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you.